On the evening of December 11th, 2019, the vibrant life of 19-year-old Tessa Majors was brutally cut short in Morningside Park, Manhattan. Tessa, with her dreams and aspirations, fell victim to a senseless act of violence by 3 individuals on a robbery spree. Her tragic death sent shockwaves through her family, friends, and community, leaving an irreplaceable void. The case became a personal crusade for the detectives, who worked tirelessly against a backdrop of intense public scrutiny and political tension. Tonight on Gold Shields, we uncover the heartbreaking story of Tessa Majors, tracing the events of that fateful evening and the lasting impact on those who loved her.
Gold Shields brings true stories from law enforcement, the military, true crime authors, and first responders. Experience the dedication, danger, and emotional toll with the heroes themselves. These gripping tales of true crimes, true stories, and true heroes are all here on Gold Shields.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy, along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How you doing, buddy?
Good, partner. What's happening, man?
You know, I'm just thrilled to be here today. I love talking to active duty detectives and cops who can give us a real perspective on things that they're working on, and we're really lucky to have a great guest today. And without keeping him waiting any longer, this is a great case. Tom, tell us about who we have.
Yeah, you know, we're so fortunate to be former members of the NYPD. We have a great line into the NYPD still, and able to get these great cases that both of us remember, and this one we certainly remember. It was a heartbreaking case back in 2019. A young girl named Tessa Majors was murdered. Just a brutal crime, but the aftermath of it and the investigation is compelling. It was, you know, driven by the youth of the victim. You know, no one likes kids getting killed. You know, that is something we hold dear to our heart, and it drives us even more as detectives. So we're lucky enough today to have the case detective who ran that investigation, Will Acevedo, second-grade detective from the NYPD. Will, it is a pleasure and an honor, pal. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. So, you know, to the audience who doesn't know, not every detective is a quote-unquote homicide detective. There are a lot of different units in the NYPD. And to rise to the level of being assigned to a borough-level homicide squad, which you are in Manhattan North Homicide, shows that you have exhibited an expertise in the investigation and successful arrest and prosecution of individuals for homicide, the most serious crime there is, taking of another life. So I've always tipped my hat to homicide detectives. It takes a lot of work. And, you know, I'm going to sound like I'm bragging on the NYPD, but I don't think anybody does it better. I mean, we really have an expertise in it because we have the most homicides historically in America, and we have the highest clearance rates. Great, great men and women have worked in those chairs, and you're in there now. So thank you for what you do. But you've had a great career. You're at Manhattan North Homicide. Can you bring us back a couple of years, Will, to this case in general? Tell us about your recollections right from the start.
Yeah, so, well, I remember that day. It was cold, like brutally cold day. It was freezing. And we were actually on our way back from getting something to eat, right? And my sergeant, he calls us, and he goes, hey, we have somebody that was stabbed inside Morningside Park. Like, oh, okay, you know, this person is likely. Like, oh man, Morningside Park, it's a 2-6. All right. So we hang up, we start heading towards Morningside, and like 5 minutes later, he calls me back. He says, hey, this happens to be a Columbia University student. Oh man, you know, so we're like, oh, well, you know, I mean, every stabbing and homicide, you know, we treat it the same. It's like you said, it's the ultimate crime and most serious crime. And, you know, but, you know, when you add the Columbia University perspective into it, you know, it becomes a little bit more political, more people involved, more hands on deck. So, yeah, we respond to Morningside Park, and, you know, Miss Majors was already at the hospital when I got there. And, you know, they called and tell me, like, listen, you know, our victim just passed away. Like, oh man, you know, this is a young 18-year-old girl who doesn't live in New York, and she comes here to go get a great education at Columbia University at Barnard, and this happens. It's tragedy, So from there on, we began our investigation. Like I said, it was like brutally cold, and you have everybody, and it happened to be December 11th. So there's a lot going on. We're short staffed, or you got Christmas parties going on, people on vacation, people take off. So they start flying in people from other commands just so we can start doing our building canvases. Find people to interview, possible witnesses. And just to get the ball rolling.
Hey, well, some people out there, Dan and I actually know, but just to give our audience a taste of this, how does, like Dan explained, you have precinct detectives and you have the homicide squad. There's a homicide in Manhattan North. How does that all work with assignments and how you get there and who's catching and working with that precinct detective squad? Walk us through that. How does that all work?
Yeah, so Manhattan North Homicide Squad, we're not an actual precinct, like you said. We're a specialized unit that we assist, all the precincts, and whenever there's a non-fatal shooting or a homicide, and we work in obviously teams A, B, and D teams. So there's a catching order, and it's funny that you mentioned the catching order because this particular case, I remember when we got some of the details and we got like further descriptions, and they said it was possibly 3 male blacks or Hispanics, and this was around the time that the whole Central Park 5 case was like brewing. So my partners and I, we sat down and we discussed this. Like, so I'm a Puerto Rican descent. My 2 partners are they're white, Irish descent, and Italian descent, and we thought just to try to avoid some of that whole political agenda and anything that could come along with it, that it'd be best for me to take this case, being a Hispanic, minority, detective, just to avoid all that whole Central Park drama and stuff that was going on at that time.
It's a shame you have to think that way, but honestly, one of the great things about being a cop and a detective, you reach a point of maturity during your career when you simply realize which way the wind is blowing, and you have to go along with it sometimes to get your job done. Because at the end of the day, you're speaking for the victim, and that's what matters most, right? But I just want to ask you, tell us a little bit about the victim in this case, Miss Tessa Majors.
Yeah, Miss Majors was an 18-year-old girl from Virginia, a musician. She was a part of a band, great family. Her dad, Mr. Majors, was a professor at James Madison University in Virginia. And like I said, she was coming here to aspire to be a musician and see how far her career can take her. Obviously she was a bright girl, attended Columbia University, Ivy League school. It was just a very tragic case, all around, for everyone involved, including, the suspects, being, those teenage boys.
Now, during that time, there happened to be a number of robberies and somewhat of a pattern going on in Morningside Park, which Dan and I both know that neighborhood very well. In the spring, I think, of that year, there were about 17 or 19 robberies in that park. When detectives like you, when you catch the case and you start going back into stats and to try to get a line into how you're going to run this investigation, that obviously comes up, correct?
Yes, actually, so there was a robbery pattern going on that particular time in Morningside Park.
Okay, so there's a robbery pattern going on. The precinct detectives, if they have a robbery team, are looking at it. Perhaps if it's enough of a pattern, Central Robbery is looking at it, or Manhattan Robbery. So there's a lot of people looking into these people in this area doing this, and all of a sudden you get this homicide case. Tell us, if you can, about your response to the scene, and take it from there if you don't mind.
So yeah, like I said, I respond to the scene. We were able to actually locate a possible witness, this gentleman who was actually going into the park, who was on his way to work out. And he tells us that he's going down the steps on Morningside Park, and he happened to notice 3 black individuals. He thought they were very young, like in their early teens, and a white female who was also in her teens. And he said that he noticed something funny going on, and he overheard one of the individuals telling the girl, "Oh, give me your phone," as if he was attempting to rob her. He was a little skeptical about it because he knew, obviously he was aware of the robberies that was going on in Morningside Park. So he thought these people were trying to lure him into to getting involved so that he can be a victim. So he tells us and that he remembers it very clearly that this was going on, and he looks over and he says, "You know what? I'm just going to mind my business. I'm going to keep going." And he says that Ms. Majors actually yelled out to him, "Help me, help me." And as he kept on, going on his way, she yelled to him, "Help me, you coward." So, and I remember that because when I spoke to this gentleman afterwards, he was literally in tears. He's like, "I can't believe that this poor girl was getting robbed and actually murdered while I was there." And, it was very heartfelt, because like I said, he was crying and he said, he's second guessing. He was like, "I could have helped her, but people are getting robbed." Like the day, actually that same day, there was a robbery occurred. And like the day before, there was several robberies. So he was, he's from the area. He's aware of his surroundings, and he just didn't want to be a victim himself. But unfortunately, that way of thinking, prevented him from helping his majors.
Wow, that's a tough call.
Yeah,
I mean, to put himself in that spot. But you know what? In a roundabout way, looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, you can understand. Especially during that time in that area, and like I said, we know it well. A lot goes on in that area. And not to get involved, to become a victim. And those, just so everyone out there, those kind of scam robbery scenes do happen to draw people into it, and then they just flip on the witness and start robbing them. So I get what he's saying. Wow. So, Will, you get there, you get to the hospital. Now, detectives go through different emotional levels. At first, you get told it's a robbery and someone's likely. And for everyone out there, likely means likely to die. Just so, we're clear on that, but we shorten everything in the NYPD and in New York, so it just becomes likely. So you go from that to getting the word that she's now dead. Now everything gets raised. Your game gets stepped up. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Once you hear, somebody was murdered, that's the reason that, someone like me and, like you gentlemen, we take this position to be detectives and investigate the ultimate crime, to provide some closure for the victims and their family. So, like you say, now it's like, oh, okay, this poor girl passed away. We got to step up and, extend the video canvases, try to find more witnesses, try to see who she could possibly been going to talk to, or who she was, if she was with anybody, and like I said, she being from Virginia, that was a little difficult at first so this is December, so she's in her first semester at Columbia. So we don't really know if she has any friends here. So we find out that she did have 2 close friends that were attending NYU, and then the hunt, to find those 2 friends of hers, and that took us a long time it took us about 18 hours just to locate those 2 people, because it's, as you gentlemen know, with our job, we've met with a lot of resistance, from the places that we try to get information from. So, we'll go into a hospital, we met with some resistance that they won't provide us any information, or give us any little details that could possibly help us along with these investigations. So there's a lot of obstacles that, come throughout these type of investigations. But like you guys said, this is what drives it. This is what keeps us going. So eventually we find those 2 gentlemen, and they tell us that they weren't with Ms. Majors, but that they last talked to her right before the incident happened, and that she asked them, she asked them for a number of someone else, and they provided her the phone number, and that was the last they heard of her. So now that takes us to another person, which she possibly could have met. And she you know, she got a hold of that person who she wanted to meet on Fifth Avenue, and coming back, that's when the incident happened. So, you know, like finding people helps us with a timeline. You know, you know, we usually know, all right, this person, the incident happened here, and this person was pronounced at, you know, 1851 hours. Pronounced meaning that she was, you know, dead. That's, you know, the time of death is when they pronounce them. So, like in this particular incident, they say, oh, she was pronounced at 1851 hours. That gives us an idea, okay, but, you know, how long was she in the park? And that's when, you know, you start talking to people, and we were able to narrow the timeline down to like a 30-minute window from where she last saw that gentleman to her going back to her dorm, going into the park. And, you know, obviously we start with the video cameras. And I tell you what, this particular case, it was a great job by everybody around, the gun violence, neighboring precincts. Everybody helped out, because this was a very extended video canvas where, you know, we had to get video from her leaving her dorms, going to the park. And that's always a hassle, because a lot of these parks sometimes don't have, you know, working video. Fortunately for us, this one did. We have to find her exiting the park, going towards the Fifth Avenue, meeting that person, coming back. So, you know, and video is time sensitive. So if there's only the case detective or, you know, somebody from Homicide trying to track video, we can lose video. But in this particular incident, I tell you what, our supervisors did a great job at delegating people to go, you know, extend the video cameras and trying to find video of Ms. Majors and possible suspects.
This is it's a bigger job than people think when it comes to all the details. You know, you're drawing from a deceased individual and no eyewitnesses and all this work to identify positively who she is. You have to make notifications to family and next of kin. That has to get done. That's manpower. You've got to ensure that the evidence, whatever evidence is being taken by crime scene, is properly documented. The first officer is being interviewed. There's a million reports that are getting done just to lay the groundwork of the response, and the case is now starting. And you, in your capacity with Homicide, you're working right alongside the precinct detective squad, the actual catching detective, ensuring that they keep all of this going in the right direction. Then you have supervisors giving direction, calling in other assets, you know, and you know how things are. There's another one that's going to pop up in a couple of days, and you're not going to be able to give all that. So you take advantage of that when you have it, right? And you send people places, go talk to this person, interview this person. Canvassing a neighborhood, you know, that timeline is so vital. You were here at this time. You use your debit card at, you know, 16:45 hours at this store on Broadway. We now have you there. And you've got to pull all that stuff out to get her there. This is time-consuming stuff. So you're in the middle of all this. This is all going on. What are next steps? After you get the foundation, you know where she was. Tell us what happened next, or what you guys prioritize next.
So, yeah, so like you said, there's a lot of moving parts to this. So while my partner and I were trying to locate possible friends, you know, other guys from my office, Alex Algero, in particular, he was the one who found the video of the suspects, you know, following another victim into the park to try to rob that person. So what happened was, these three individuals, they're looking for, you know, a possible target. They see a gentleman who they thought was an easy victim going into the Morningside Park. They follow this person into the park, right? And so that's when Alex catches these three individuals along with that other target going into the park. And so we see them going into the park. So at some point during them, you know, following this person, they decided, no, let's stay away from this person. And they see Ms. Majors coming into the park from the top end of the park, and they met at the bottom of the stair landing, and that's when everything took place.
And the details are rough, but you know, we want to get them out because it's important to the story and what drives you and what drives all of us as a detective, you know, and them surrounding her and then inflicting how many times did she get stabbed?
So she got stabbed one time right to the heart. So, he punctured her heart, and that was, what caused her demise.
And then
So,
she
but
actually she actually made it up the stairs, right,
yeah,
to the
so I was
street.
going to get into that. So they run into Miss Majors. They attempt to rob her for her cell phone, and while all this is going on, Miss Majors, she just didn't want to go without a fight. She see these three kids, one being 13, the other two being 14. She sees these little kids, and she's not taking them serious at this point. But unfortunately, they were serious, and they were not going to just give up this easy target. What they thought was an easy target. So they get into a scuffle, and actually, what caused the one of the teenagers to stab her was that she was actually fighting with this boy, and it seems like she was putting up a good fight, possibly getting the upper hand, which caused that kid to get upset, pull a knife out, and then stab her, which eventually causing her to pass away.
So you've got all this information now. The ME report has come back, cause of death, manner of death, all that stuff, all determined. You have evidence at the scene. What was recovered at the scene that was helpful in the investigation, if anything?
So at the scene, her jacket was recovered at the scene. Some headphones, a knife, like a little knife that we know that wasn't a knife, but there was another little knife around that was recovered, and I just can't remember what other things were recovered, but that was like the most important thing that stands out.
So now you're there, you have a victim. Now you gotta get the bad guys. Now you gotta get them. So how, we all go into cases with theories or possible knowing perps because of where things are happening and reputations and things on the street being said. So how does the hunt start with getting the bad guys?
In the darkest of nights, you need a light you can trust. That's why we rely on Streamlight. Whether you're investigating a scene, navigating through uncharted territory, or just need a dependable flashlight for those unexpected moments, Streamlight is your go-to source. With over 45 years of innovation, Streamlight crafts rugged, high-performance flashlights that can withstand the toughest conditions. From tactical torches for law enforcement to everyday carry lights, Streamlight has you covered. Join the Streamlight community today and see why professionals trust Streamlight for their lighting needs. Visit streamlight.com to find your perfect light. Streamlight, lighting your way through the shadows.
So, like I said, this particular case, it was a great job by just everybody involved. So, we get the images of the three possible suspects, and they were wearing like a school uniform, school attire. So there was a local school, which happened to be right across the street from Homicide Park, where the incident took place. And these kids that went into the park were wearing the khaki pants and the colors of the kids that attend that school. So, that's when now we get still images of these individuals. We start putting them out, distributing amongst the precinct. And the 2-6 FIOs, those dudes did a great job, phenomenal job. They happened to notice that, like, oh, you know what? These three kids, they attend this school right here. And we don't particularly know their names, but we've seen these three individuals. So now it's the next day, about 4 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon. The FIOs were canvassing, for for possible suspects. They noticed what they believe were the kids, or was one of the kids that was involved, going into an apartment building. It was very cold, so these kids are hanging out inside the lobby of an apartment building, and that's when the FIO team, they proceed to go into the apartment building, and they place these kids on the under arrest for criminal trespassing. They're not allowed to be there because no one lives there. And one of these kids was in possession of a knife. One of the kids that fit the description, wearing the same exact clothes from the incident the night before, was wearing the same clothes. Like I said, he had a knife on him. So now, us police officers, and we start thinking like, oh my God, you know, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, but we're like, all right, let's turn it back and let's bring this kid in and try speaking to him. So him being 13 years old it's much different than bringing somebody who's an adult. When you bring somebody who's an adult to talk to them, we can just Mirandize them and they waive and we'll speak to them. With the juveniles, you know, it's a whole different rules, the whole different set of rules and guidelines. So we bring this kid in, we know, we like, all right, we got to find a legal guardian of this kid. Kid's telling us he doesn't have any parents, that both his parents are deceased, which turned out to be true. So his legal guardian happened to be his uncle. We get a hold of his uncle. His uncle comes into the 2-6 precinct, and you know, we place them both into the interview room. We press the live recording, and we start talking. You know, both the kid and the uncle, they waive Miranda, and we start speaking to them. And little by little, that's when the kid starts giving us the story. You know, and you know, lo and behold, we got the right guys, and everything just unfolded, and it started rolling from there.
So how many arrests were made, and did you get statements from any of the other kids?
So we made 3 arrests. The initial kid who we got, which was the 13-year-old who gave us a statement, we got him the day of. He was charged with only robbery because he didn't really take part in the actual crime. He was just there, you know, just following along. The other kid, Luciano, we got him the next day, and then we got Rashawn Weaver, who was the actual stabber, you know, a couple of weeks later. And I'll get to Rashawn in a minute. So Rashawn, he had a lawyer attached to him, and so did Mr. Luciano. So we couldn't speak with him.
So did they have prior arrests? Were they part of that robbery crew that was working in that park?
So Rashawn Weaver, he was like the main culprit. He was the ringleader, which, you know, where he would get other kids to come with him. Not bad kids either. So and this is why I say it was a little sad for me in this particular case, because those other 2 kids, one of those, Luciano, happened to be a kid that came from a great background. Mom and dad are both in the household. Older siblings are going through college and, you know, like major universities. And smart kid just happened to be caught up with the wrong kid and went along to, you know, do these robberies. So yeah, so you know, Luciano, we got a couple of days later. So I'm sorry, let me go back. So Luciano, right? We get the names from the first guy. He gives us Rashawn Weaver and Luciano. Now we got to go to the school and like get the you know, the roster, because this kid said these guys were in their class. So we got to go meet with the teachers and school administrators to see if we have anybody by these names at the school. The next morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm already there at the school, and you know, they give us the roster sheet, like, oh yeah, you know, lo and behold, there is a Luciano and there is a Weaver in the same class. And that's how we ended up getting Luciano. Weaver never showed up to school.
So being that, are they all juveniles?
So the only one that had any prior history was Weaver. He, like I said, he was the ringleader of the crew. He, unlike Luciano, he didn't come from the greatest household. His father was incarcerated. His brothers were incarcerated for robbing people. So that's all that he knew, was going out there, you know, and robbing people and assaulting people. And it's kind of crazy because he was only 14, but he was almost like a seasoned criminal already.
Now, does, you know, just kind of going backwards a little bit, but forward, if that makes sense, does the specter of the Central Park 5 case pop into your head now once you start narrowing down who the perps are?
So, yeah, no. So once we find out the ages of these kids, 13, 14, and 14, we're like, you know, the Central Park thing was like at its peak. It was brewing. These guys were just released from prison, and you know, they saying, oh, we were coerced to, you know, give these statements and everything, and now all, you know, all the higher ups on our job are like, you know, we got to make sure we handled this case properly. We got to make sure we, you know, dotted our I's and crossed our T's. We don't want anything repeated from that incident. And I can assure you that that case was tight. You know, we made sure everything was done properly. Everything was on video, documented. You know, everything went pretty well. So, like I said, you know, and that's all that people kept talking about. Oh, the Central Park Five. Is this another Central Park Five incident where, you know, these 3 kids were, you know, tricked into admitting into something that they possibly didn't do. And from, you know, personally, it became very stressful for me, in particularly, because so now so let me just give a little bit of the background of the way it works. When a juvenile gets arrested, it's not like when an adult gets arrested. He has to go to corporate counsel and everything is rolling. So within a week from that arrest, I'm downtown, you know, in the juvenile court, and this is front page news. This is a national case. And, you know, they're like, oh, you know, this guy, he coerced these kids to give this statement and stuff like that. You know, fortunately for us, that everything is recorded and it was, you know, right there for everyone to see.
So, and one of the things about working as a detective in the NYPD, especially in the borough of Manhattan, it seems to be where the world's attention is much more than anywhere else. You get a case like this, somebody from out of town, gifted young woman, is a student at Ivy League school, Columbia University on the west side of Manhattan, and she gets killed walking into a park not far from there. And everybody wants to know what's going on with the case. When you have a high-profile case, when you're a detective in the NYPD, you've got chiefs, captains, inspectors, lieutenants, sergeants, assistant commissioners, deputy commissioners, the police commissioner, the mayors. Everybody wants to know everything that's going on every time they turn around. That's a lot of pressure on a chain of command, and you feel it as detective on your shoulders. I've been there. I've felt that level of pressure, and you can't let it sway you, and you didn't, from doing your job. But it really does add an extra twist, right? This is hard enough work, right? You just wish.
It's actually very difficult for me because that's the first time. I think I do a good job at you know, checking my job at the door when I go home. I don't talk to my wife and children about, you know, homicides or cases like that, because, you know, what we see, it's you know, it takes its toll on you, whether we want to say it does or it doesn't. You know, it does. We see a lot of different things. That was the first and only time that I had to tell my wife and children, you know, about my job, and to possibly stay away from people, you know, attempting to interview them or finding out anything about them to get to me. I'm not a big social media guy, but, you know, I was getting threats on social media about this case, how I tricked these kids into giving this statement and locking up these innocent poor children. It took a toll on me. It took a toll, actually, almost to the point where I almost didn't want to come talk about this case, you know. But it did take a toll on me. I was talking to the police commissioner, Shay, directly. You know, usually we do a chain of command where the lieutenant talks to the captain talks to the chief talks to, you know, the commissioners, things like. But in this particular case, the Commissioner Shay was calling me directly on my phone in the morning, like, "Well, what do you got? Do you have this guy in custody? You know, I'm hearing this." He wanted it directly from the source, from the horse's mouth. He didn't want it to go up the chain, you know, command. He wanted it directly from me.
Yeah, and you know what? For everyone out there, it's not TV. You know, when we're doing these cases, and just as great as Will just explained it, it's not TV. There is so much pressure on detectives when it comes to a case like this, like Danny just said, and Will just explained. It is mind-blowing sometimes, where there's times you want to just kind of push away from your desk and go outside and yell, you know, to get it just out of your head for a minute and then come back to neutral and get back to, you know, work. But, you know, getting a call directly from the police commissioner of the NYPD is not a normal thing. And, you know, as cool as it, you know, sometimes plays out on TV, it sucks. It's not, it's not what any detective wants. Like, all right, cool, I'm in touch with the PC. No, none of us want that. Because here's why. Not only is it just a pressure phone call, you have to be dead on with everything you're telling him with no slip-ups, because he's hanging up the phone with you and calling the mayor and then calling somebody else. And it doesn't stop. So, everyone out there, being a detective, especially in the NYPD in a high-profile case, is 24/7 of stress. And before we go on, you handled this as professionally, bro, as I've heard a story. And hats off to you, because, we've been there. Dan's been involved in high-profile cases. I have. You have. It is hard. And you did a phenomenal job. And I want to get into what happened with these 3 kids to even show even more how a phenomenal job you did. What happened with the case once they're all arrested, they're all locked up? What happens from there?
So being that it was a high-profile case, we locked up the first 13-year-old kid, and he, everything was able to stick on him. So the other 2, Luciano and Weaver, we arrested Rashad Weaver the day after Christmas. We were able to locate him, and he was actually hiding out. I actually forgot to mention this. During the scuffle with him and Miss Majors actually bit him and got a real big chunk off of his hand. So he was hiding out, and his family was trying to keep him away until the bite mark heals. So we were able to locate him. He was arrested, and unfortunately, we had to, let him go until we got further evidence. Because being such a high-profile case, and with the whole Central Park thing, we wanted to make the case as tight as we can before we proceeded. And in the beginning, as an investigator, detective, and our department, we get frustrated with that. We're like, no, we want this. We want to make sure this sticks. We want this now. But on our side, it's probably best we make sure we get everything tight. That way we don't have any hiccups moving forward for the trial hearings and the actual trial itself. This particular case didn't go that far because they pled out. But, the AD on this case, Matthew Bogdanos, did an awesome job. Like I said, this case was tight from beginning to end, with all the help that, Detective Signoretti, who happened to be the case detective, and I, all the help that we got from everybody involved. It was a great job from everyone.
So Tessa Majors' parents brought her up to Columbia University. I can probably assume that when they received a letter telling them that their daughter had been accepted into this Ivy League school, it was a moment of great joy in the family. The father's a professor at James Madison. They have within their family education and pursuit of excellence, you can tell. She comes up to Columbia to refine that, right? To move on to the next phase of her life. And she runs into a couple of teenagers who want her cell phone so bad that they're willing to kill her for it. Not that they have the need for that phone over any other phone, but just because they feel like it. For reasons that maybe because they're immature and they're young might make sense to some, but to the world we look at with horror and say, how can this happen to such a bright young person who has the world in front of them? And these are the things that happen in the world. And, until people actually are a victim or a witness to a crime like this, they don't really recognize that these things are more common than they think in the world in general. And when they happen, it takes experienced, dedicated people to bring justice to it. Now, the work that you guys did, all of you collectively, to get these individuals identified, to build a case against them, to ensure that they were forced to take plea bargains, is the work that may have saved who knows how many other people from dealing with them. Now, they're young and they were on their way to careers, and maybe their time in prison will only make them more of a criminal. Maybe it won't. Who knows? But at the very least, you spoke for Tessa Majors when nobody else could. And that's why I was always proud to be a detective, and I'm very proud of you and the work that everyone in the NYPD did in 2019 in this case, because that's the essence of what real police work is. It's answering for those who can't speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, and particularly in the world during that time, it was hard. That was, the end of 2019 spill over to 2020. We got COVID, the world shuts down. You know what I mean? So I just can't imagine, what well, let alone anybody that has to suffer the loss of a loved one during regular time. Like now you add the whole COVID and the world shut down. There's really nothing you can do but just think about, that crime.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Will, as we draw to a conclusion to this amazing interview, you're what the NYPD is. You're what NYPD detectives are, that Dan and I strive to be, and we're fortunate in our careers, and we watch you still in the NYPD doing this job, and your focus and what this is all about just came out in one story. I mean, we could sit here and tell stories all day, which we all do, to hear this and what you did. And you know what, everyone, you always hear, you're not always hear, I shouldn't say that. There's times you hear cops are all into just getting the bad guys and that's it, and get it. And you explained how you felt for even the bad guys because of where they were in life and one not being a bad kid. And that tears at you even more as a detective. You're focused on what you want to do for the victim. And then in a roundabout way, the perps are victims, and that just makes it more, of a heartbreaking job sometimes when you have to deal with that. But you handled it as professionally as anyone. And I think the best thing you did, which shows what kind of person you are, Will, and what kind of detective you are, you stressed that it was a team effort. And so many people were involved. And that's what people need to know. You watch TV and you have the two detectives just doing everything. That does not happen. That is strictly TV. When you walk into a squad room after a homicide, there are 65 people in there. Yelling, talking, screaming, typing.
Deal.
Yeah, it is if no one has witnessed that, it is the most chaotic, circus-like atmosphere you can walk into. But everyone knows what they're doing, which is the weird part of it. But you know what? Hats off to you, man. What a job.
Yeah, and at a time in our history as a country where respect and appreciation for law enforcement was hitting an all-time rock bottom in 2020, right? When recruiting issues exist, when public confidence, when the media has decided to gang up on us and beat us up and portray us as incompetent, racist, haters, killers, whatever they want to call us. A lot of people were impacted by that, and the profession itself was given a black eye. But I tip my hat to you and the other men and women of law enforcement, specifically because of our NYPD careers, of our job, who kept the good fight up, who did your best to ignore all that noise, because it's all just noise and it goes away. At the end of the day, there's somebody like you standing over a victim, dedicated and committed to getting justice for that person, and you did. And you do it all the time. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. And to everybody who's listening who hasn't been in this position, understand this is a big commitment. This digs into your life. It digs into your soul. But somebody has to do it. And the people that do it are more committed than you could ever imagine. And I'll say one thing about the NYPD that I'm pretty proud of. When we were after you, we got you. When you were bad, we got you. And we got you good because we know what we're doing, right? And you continue that tradition, so thank you for doing that, Will.
Thank you
Pleasure.
much. I appreciate those kind words.
And, we're just proud. We're proud that we're part of that department, that we were and you still are.
Just real quick, I want to say thank you to you guys. You guys did it before, me and everyone who's, you guys, basically paved the way for this great policing that we don't get enough credit for. And thank you guys for that. I appreciate that.
It's kind and generous of you to say, but, we all stand on the back of giants, right? We had, on the shoulders of giants, we had great people before us, like Tom's dad and other great, I could name a million, who showed me everything. And I tried to show people as I was going on in my years on the job, but that's what we do. We hand down the knowledge. And
And
Exactly.
there's a reason that the seal of the DEA is the greatest detectives in the world. Sorry, everyone. We got to do it.
Yeah. To people listening in LA, you guys are okay. I mean, you know, good guys, good girls, you know, but
Yep.
sorry. Yeah.
But we're a little partial. Sorry, we're allowed to be. We don't put that out too often, Dan. But you know, every
No.
once in a while we got to do that.
Nope. It's all good. It's all good.
Will, listen. We can't thank you enough for just coming on today and telling this incredible story of a great case and great work. But please continue to stay safe in the atmosphere that's still out there when it comes to police officers, detectives, and everyone. Stay safe, and our prayers are always with you, which we will get to in 1 second. Danny, what do you think, buddy?
I just want to say thank you. Outstanding story. I know how hard it is. Sometimes some cases really are more difficult to tell, and I know this wasn't easy for you, but thank you for sharing. It's a story that needs to be told. Thank you. And there will be something for you in department mail eventually. We'll make its way down there. A couple of challenge coins for you. All right. I'm telling them. We're sending you challenge coins, and you're going to love them. They're going to be great. So
thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. Yeah.
It's our honor. Thank you. And continue to serve the city that you love it, and we love the way that you do. And thank everybody that you work with. Tell them we appreciate you.
So this part of the show, like we always do, pray for our law enforcement officers out there, our detectives, our officers, bosses, everyone. It's a thankless job sometimes, and the only thing that keeps us going is our oath and the willingness that we have and the ability to speak for victims. And they do it every single day. So please keep them all in your prayers as well as their families, because police department, police officers, it's a group effort. The families involved, as Will explained during his story. So pray for everyone. For my partner, Dan Murphy, Detective Will Acevedo, Tom Smith from Gold Shields, everyone stay safe, and we'll talk to everybody soon.